Casey. Good morning, Casey. Okay, so microphones are off, but as I just said, please feel free to put your audio on to ask questions. Also, feel free to use the chat and I will check in on the chat. I mentioned before a couple people signed on that I'm going to send you a PDF of everything you see in the PowerPoint. So have a notebook for anything you personally want to remember, but anything that you see on the screen, don't worry about writing it down. So it's a lot of copying if you're trying to do that. And then there's a good chance that you're missing. And I'm not good at writing and listening. So I like having that PDF at the end. And this is, I think, the third mantra intensive we've done. So I started off with the Mahamrityunjaya, and I think we did that last year. And I did it after we had our community Havan, just because I thought it would be nice for people to feel really confident using that mantra, whether in your own practice or if you wanted to use it when we do our Havan in the summer. And we usually get together in either July or August. Everybody is invited from HIV to come and do the fire ceremony, which is pretty fun. So I noticed that when we did it last year, some people were very confident with the mantra, some not so much. So just having a chance to kind of study it outside that context of, a community event. So I do have those recordings from both the Mahamrityunjaya and the Gayatri. So I know some of you have been to both of those as well. If you haven't heard those and you want to, just let me know. I still have the recordings and it's a very similar format to what we're going to do today. So it should be pretty easy to go back and watch those recordings. Just send me an email and I will get you those links too. So without further ado, let's get going with the prayers of the tradition. I'm going to share my screen. Start here. Okay. All right, so this is the class you're in case you forgot. All righty, so the prayers of the tradition. I want to start first by telling you what they are. And this is an outline of the prayers we're going to look at today, except for the two that are in bold, and I'll get to that in a moment. So the prayers of the tradition are prayers that have been part of the yoga tradition since the beginning. All right, so these are prayers that are very old. And the way we do them in the Himalayan tradition is how Swami Rama asked people to practice them. So he asked students to practice them both in the morning and in the evening, and in this particular order. Okay, so these prayers are not unique to our tradition, but doing them like this is. Okay. So if you were down in Honesdale or at any of the other centers that Swami Rama started, this would be the program. So the ashrams in India as well. In the morning, you would do these 5 prayers, and in the evening, these 4. And I've heard from some people who have been to Honesdale very lately, like in the last year, that Panditji might have changed to what they're doing a little bit. I'm not sure. I haven't been down there now, I think in 2 years. So, but this has been traditionally the order. So these prayers are, for the most part, are from the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are probably the oldest philosophical texts. They come from the Vedic tradition. And these are the prayers that accompany the Upanishads. So each Upanishad has its own, it's called a Shanti mantra or a peace mantra that's associated with it. Okay. So most of them are from there, and I'm going to go through and just show you their names. The first one is not. The first one is called the Guru Stotram, or the Guru Prayer. And then what I have in italics is the first part of the prayer. So the first utterance in the prayer. And sometimes these prayers are known by that name as well. So you might call this prayer the Guru Brahma, or you might call it the Guru Prayer. You might call it the Guru Stotram. Okay. This one is from the Guru Purana. Okay, so it's from an old story in the tradition. Okay, so first the Guru prayer is sung or said or chanted. And the way we're going to look at them today is just how to chant them. All right, so how to pronounce them correctly, how to say the sounds correctly, where to put stress on different words. Out there in the world, you'll hear different people using different melody. Some people just chant and it sounds more like talking. Some people sing them. Some people are somewhere in between. And when I first started learning them, I had recordings by Sandy, Pandaji, Rolf, people out there doing kirtan. So Deva Premal records some of these prayers, and everybody seemed just a little bit different. So don't let that throw you. Okay. There's a correct way to say the words, but the melody is up to you, right? There are recordings from Honesdale of Pandaji saying the prayers. So if your goal is to use those when you're in Honesdale, listening to his recordings will help you match, right, what everyone else is chanting. If you just want to use them for yourself, if you have another recording that you really like, you can learn to chant according to that sound. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So don't worry too much about melody and whether you're singing or speaking, or that's going to be really dependent on who you're listening to. And maybe you'll have your own way. All right. So this is part of your personal practice. There might be a way that you like to do it, and that's fine. Okay. Okay. Then the second one is called the peace prayer, or the Asato Ma. So this one is a peace prayer from the Upanishads. And then next, there would be this very long prayer. And it's the prayer at dawn by Shankaracharya. This one, I'm not going to do this one today, or down in the bottom, there's going to be one that's called the evening prayer. These two are long. Okay, so there's several paragraphs long. And you can do the shorter prayers without the longer ones, which is totally fine. But I would like to maybe do them. So as we look at other mantra intensives, we could look at the morning prayer all by itself, and then down in the bottom, the evening prayer all by itself. Okay, so they're a little bit longer and they take a little bit more work, so they should probably be their own class. Okay, but there would be this prayer at dawn next, and that's by Shankaracharya, who was a teacher in the tradition from the 8th century, and it's from his writings. Okay. The fourth thing would be the prayer for harmony. Again, we're back to peace mantras from the Upanishads. This one is sometimes called the student teacher prayer, or the Sahana Vavatu. And you may have heard teachers at the Himalayan Institute using this prayer in class. So somebody told me, I think, that Wendy uses it a lot. I had one of Wendy's students in a training one time. It can be used at the beginning of a class, at the end of a class. So if you're a teacher, this is a nice prayer too to add. It's kind of either way of opening the class or closing the class. Okay, so that's the student teacher prayer. And then another peace prayer from the Upanishads, the prayer of completion, is the Purna Adaha. Purnam Adaha. Okay. Okay. So then in the evening, it's a little bit different. The Guru prayer is said again. The peace prayer is said again. The prayer for harmony is next. And then this is sometimes called the evening prayer. And again, this is the long one. And it's another one from Shankaracharya. Okay, and from one of his writings, the Soundarya Lahari. And it's selected verses from that. Okay. Brianna says Carrie does. I'm sure, yes, Carrie is one of our Sanskrit students. So that's great. You'll notice that in the evening, the prayer of completion is dropped. Maybe people are more tired in the evening, I don't know. But this is how Swami Rama asked students in the tradition to do prayers. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Okay, so if you look at the morning lineup, we're going to look at 4 prayers the Guru prayer, the peace prayer, the prayer for harmony, and the prayer of completion. So here they are, and this is the handout that's given to the teachers in training now. And I just want to talk a little bit about meaning. And I don't want to, you spend a lot of time, right, talking about the philosophical basis of these prayers. So instead of spending a lot of time there, I want to spend more time on pronunciation, because I think that that's important for starting to use them. Okay. So, but it's important to know what you're saying, of course. So the Guru prayer says, Brahma, the creator, is the Guru. Vishnu, the sustainer, is the Guru. Shiva, the Lord of dissolution, is the Guru. Truly, the transcendent one is the Guru. To that most venerable Guru, homage. So it's important, I think, to understand that we're talking about energies. Okay. So if you know a little bit about Hinduism, you might know that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are three aspects of God, right, of the divine. But this isn't a prayer to Hindu deities. And I know sometimes people are a little like, what am I doing when I'm saying these prayers? And you can see it that way, you know, and for a lot of people, they do, all right? But as yogis, we're looking at the primal energies behind these words. So Brahma is the energy of creation in the universe. And Brahma is what brings things into being. Okay. And so when you say the Guru, we mean the teacher. But Guru is even a stronger word than teacher. So the word Guru means a person who removes darkness, or even an energy that removes darkness. So in our tradition, we really think that Guru is a force. Okay, so it's not some person. A person may act as Guru, but that person who is acting as Guru is channeling that teacher force. And it's more than just teaching. The idea is removing darkness or ignorance from students' minds. Okay. So when Swami Rama was here, he was called Guru, right, by students, but he was always very clear that everything he was teaching was coming through him from the tradition. The tradition is the Guru, okay? And that there's no worshiping people in this tradition at all, okay? And he's very adamant about that, okay? So this creative force is a teacher or a remover of darkness. Then Vishnu is the sustaining power in the universe. So it is that which really sustains life. Okay, so if you look at the world around us and everything that is living, it is the power of Vishnu, the sustainer, that once these beings are created, sustains life, right? So it's the life force in the universe. So Vishnu is the Guru. And then Shiva, the Lord of dissolution, is the Guru. So you can see that if there's a power that creates things, a power that sustains things, there's also a power that ends, right? Ends things at the end of a cycle so that they can be reborn into a new cycle. And that power is Shiva. So after saying that these three energies are the Guru, one says truly, the transcendent one is the Guru. So truthfully, it is something that is even beyond those three energies, right? It is, the word is Brahman, right? It is universal consciousness, all right? So even though it may be acting as creator, sustainer, or I guess dissolutioner isn't something, the power that brings things to an end of a cycle, all of those energies, all of those powers really come from one source, okay? So the idea through all these prayers is that of the Upanishads, that idea of there being one universal consciousness, one source for everything. Okay. So in English, we might call it universal consciousness. The word from Vedanta is Brahman. Okay. or you could call it God, right? All comes from really one source. So even though sometimes people look at this like, well, there are a lot of different Hindu gods, they are actually just personifying energies from one source. And we'll always see that idea of Brahman in the Upanishads, one source. Okay. But with personified expressions. Okay. So truly that one source is the guru. And then to that most venerable guru, Namaha. Okay. So sometimes this word is translated as oblations or I bow my head. And if we look over here at the Sanskrit for it, I want to tell you, do not be concerned with the endings of words. So if you've studied a little bit of Sanskrit, you might know that it is a language that changes nouns according to where they are in a sentence. So if a noun is a subject, a direct object, an indirect object, it'll have a different ending. Sanskrit is also a language that changes the ends of nouns depending on the sounds around it. Okay, so the Vedic tradition was originally completely oral. All right, and the importance of sound and chanting are above and beyond anything else, any other considerations, is how things sound, how the energy of voice flows. So nouns will change their ending to sound better. And there's a whole system of rules in Sanskrit for how to change words so they sound better in a sentence. And it's the bane of people learning Sanskrit, right? They're called Sandhi rules. And they do follow a pattern, right? You can learn them, but they are definitely a complication. So for example, the word guru, here we see it ending with an R. Here we see it ending with a H, and we'll understand more about what these endings mean when we get to the pronunciation part. And then here we see it ending Ave. Okay, so there's 3 different ways just in this short little prayer that guru appears. It's all the word guru. These are just different endings for nouns. Okay, again, based on the role they play in the sentence and based on the sounds around them. Okay, so that can trip you up if you haven't studied a case marking language before. All right, so the Slavic languages do this too for parts of a sentence. In English, not as much. Okay, the only place we do it in English is with pronouns. So if it's a subject, we say he. And if it's a direct object, we'll say him. All right, but we don't change anywhere else. So this is a little bit unique. All right, so the prayer begins Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshvaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And we're going to talk about pronunciation, so don't worry about any of the sounds you're hearing yet. Okay, so good for the guru prayer. Okay, and again, we're going to break them all down. So we're just kind of getting a big picture of what they are. Okay, the next one is called the peace prayer. And if you would like to memorize a prayer to make it part of your meditation practice or your prayer practice, this is probably the easiest one. And I was exposed to these for the first time in teacher training, and this is the first one that I learned. It's very repetitive and it's pretty easy, and it's very beautiful too. It has a wonderful meaning to it. So this might be a place to start if you want to add just one prayer, okay, and start to memorize it. So this one says, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from mortality to immortality. So it's pretty self-explanatory, this one. It's asking for guidance from things that are confusing, all right, to things that are real. Okay, so what is really true? Lead me to truth. Lead me from darkness to light. So again, from things that are not good for me, right? Things that are leading me from the path to light, things that are nourishing and beneficial to me. and lead me from an understanding of what is immortal in me. Okay. So we're not so much about attachment to the things of this world, right? But what is the immortal aspect of the individual, right? So a connection with your soul. And the way it's structured, and again, another note on Sanskrit is that it is a free word order language. Okay, so the order of words will not always match how we would say something in English. So the way the prayer is structured is first is the thing we don't want. So asato is that which is unreal or delusionary, confusing. All right. And then this word ma means me. And then sad means truth. So you may have seen it as sat, S-A-T, like Sat Chit Ananda, right? So you're thinking, why does it end with a D instead of a T? And that's one of those sound changes. So this is the word sat. It just looks like sad here. And then gamaya means lead me, right? So it's asking, please lead me. So it's something like unreal, me, real, lead me. And it keeps that same structure right through. That's why it's kind of easy to learn. Then tamaso means darkness. And if you've studied the gunas at all, you know, the guna of tamas, right? Is that heaviness, inertia, darkness, laziness, right? So lead me from that. Tamaso, darkness, me, jyotir, light. Please lead me. And then this word, mrityor, is mortality, right? Or things of this world that are not enduring. Again, me. And then amritam means immortality, right? So it's not the sense of immortality as in living forever, but the parts of me that are immortal, right? And there are teachings, I think in all spiritual traditions, of the aspects of a person that don't end, right? That are enduring. And again, this gamaya, lead me. So it sounds like asato ma sad gamaya, tamaso ma jyotir gamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Okay, so that's the peace prayer. Again, oops. Stop me if you have any questions on that. Okay, so this is the student teacher prayer, or the prayer for harmony. And I think that of all four of them, this is the hardest one to pronounce. But we're going to see that when we break it up into syllables, it's a lot easier. So this one says, O Lord, may we be protected. May we be nourished. May we create strength among one another. May our study be filled with light. May there be no ill feeling among us. And if you look over at the Sanskrit, you'll see this word saha, saha, saha. Saha means together. Okay, so this is a prayer you say for more than just yourself, right? It's you and whoever you're studying with. So it could work between student and teacher. It could also work in like a study group, anywhere where people are learning together. Okay, so Om Sahana Vavatu. May we be protected together. Saha Now Bhu Naktu. May we be nourished together. So this is we, nourished. Saha Viryam, so together, and this Viryam means strength. So if you know Virasana, right, is the hero's pose in yoga. So this Vira is strength. And then Karavavahai means among one another. So may there be strength in our working together. And then Tejasvi. So Tejas is considered a divine light. So people that are very wonderful teachers or who are on the spiritual path are said to have a glow, and that's Tejas. right? Which is the glow of spiritual knowledge. And then Navaditam Astu. So that's may our together be filled with light, and may our study together be filled with light. And Ma Vidvi Shavahai. So may there be no ill feeling among us. So no competition, no jealousy, that kind of thing. Okay. So good. That's the student teacher prayer. And then this is the prayer for completion. And it uses this word Purnam. And again, just like Guru in the first prayer, we're going to see all different ways of forming Purnam. Again, according to its role in the sentence, if it's a subject or a direct object or other, and according to sound. So you will see Purnam, Purnat, Purnasya, they're all the same word. And this word Purnam, here it's translated as perfect. Sometimes it's translated as complete, and sometimes it's translated as whole, starting with a W, so W-H-O-L-E. And the idea of Purnam is, again, that everything comes from one source. And we tend to look at things in the universe as all being very separate. And also we tend to value judge things. This is good, this is bad, this is dark, this is light. But the idea of this prayer is that everything comes from one source and everything is linked because of that, right? So sees the universe as this web. And the idea is that if something is removed, this web of life is still all interconnected, right? All from the same source. And that everything that is here, whether it's beings or emotions or events, is all interrelated, right? It comes from this whole. And you can never change that, right? So that's a natural law, a spiritual law that the universe keeps that wholeness. So this one is Om Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam. This is perfect, that is perfect, all the same. Purnat Purnam Udachyate. So perfection comes from the perfect, one source. Purnasya Purnam Adaya. So when perfection is taken away from perfection, Purnam eva vashishyate. Perfection still remains. Okay, that's a little abstract, but again, very beautiful thought. Everything is as it is. Okay, so are we good for just kind of a general idea of what these prayers say? Yeah. Okay, good. And then there might be certain ones that are more meaningful to you. Again, so we learn them all and we recite them all, but if there are certain prayers that are more touching for you, you can also use them in isolation. They don't have to be in this order together. You're using them for your practice. Okay, so now let's get to the pronunciation. And if you've already done some Sanskrit, this will be review. And what I could do when I teach these mantra classes is we could spend about an hour and just do the Sanskrit alphabet, and that would cover everything. When I did the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, I just pulled out what you would need to know. So as a speaker of English, what you might not recognize in a good transliteration. Okay, so transliteration means you're looking at Sanskrit and you see the Latin or English letters, and they have some kinds of markings on them. Okay, so you'll see these prayers in different ways. You might see them in Devanagari, so in the actual script, right, the Indian script. More likely, you will see them in the English letters, and sometimes they are not marked, and then we can't be exact. So when you're working with a Sanskrit mantra, it is really better to find what's called a transliteration, which means English letters with dots and lines. Okay. And if you have a good transliteration, your pronunciation will be 100%. So Sanskrit is like Spanish. There is a one-to-one correspondence. Every letter only makes one sound. All right. So it is not like English where you have to guess, right? So we have several letters in English that can be pronounced many different ways, especially our vowels. All right. So it's very difficult as a non-native speaker of English to know how to approach new words. All right. So Sanskrit is simple in that what you see is always what you get. Okay. And so if you've heard this before, it's always good to hear it again. It might help you if you don't know these words or you don't have notes from another class or from a teacher training to write down a word that will trigger your memory. Okay. So there aren't that many sounds in Sanskrit that are not in English. It's an Indo-European language. And as such, it's not very weird. Okay. There are some sounds we don't have, but there aren't many. Okay. So as somebody who knows an Indo-European language already, most of this will be pretty easy. Okay. So there are simple vowels, and the simple vowels are ah. So if it helps, you could write the word hot. Remember, ah. And again, you can see already how it's a little confusing in English because if you write hot, you're seeing the letter O making the ah sound. All right. So an instance where English can be aggravating. If you see the letter I, it always sounds like E, like in B, whether the animal or the verb, or C, always E. And then you'll see the letter U. The letter U is always U. So like in blue, through, true. And then here's one we do not have. This is written as an R with a dot underneath it. Sounds like er. And it's a little bit like if you're cold and you go brr, brr, right? Like er. So it's a, e, u, er. And if you need something to jog your memory, you might think about, again, that sound you make when you're cold, butter, burr, burr. But it's a little bit more of like a trill sound. So if you do know the sound of the Spanish R, ra, right? Okay. So a, e, u, r. Those are our simple vowels. And then they all have a pair that is the long version. So if you see your simple vowel with a line on top of it, it means hold it twice as long. So this is a, e, u. There is also a corresponding long but you'll never see it. It appears like once in the language. So it's usually just left off for simplicity. So the simple vowels, a, e, u, r. The long vowels, a, e, u. And when you see them written like this, they're always pronounced just like that. Excuse me. Then we have 4 more vowels to learn. These are the complex vowels. The letter E always sounds like A, like in hey, or ray, or stay. Etude, right? If you play an etude on the piano, A. Then when the letter A and I are next to each other, it always sounds like I. Good example is the word aisle, like in a church, there's aisles of pews because it's actually written AI. So aisle is a good memory jogger for AI. O is always O, like in bow, toe, slow. And then AU is always ow. like in plow, the Tao, the Tao. Okay. So the complex vowels are A, I, O, ow. So that's what you need to know for vowels. Then there's some other special sounds that are important to recognize. So the first thing you'll see a lot in Sanskrit mantras is an M with a dot underneath. Sometimes people write it as an M with a dot on top. They're the same thing. More often the dot's underneath, but if you see an M with a dot on top, it's the same thing. And that's actually a process called Anuswara. And what that process means is look at the vowel in front and nasalize it. So a really good example is om, om. So if you see the word OM, and this is one everyone knows, if it didn't have that dot underneath the M, it would be the letter M, and it would sound like om. But because the M dot, it sounds like om. All right. And M dot will work after any of the vowels. So I could say im, rim, I'm, om. Okay. And they're very common, especially in what's called seed mantras or bija mantras. So if you've ever learned like the mantras for the different chakras, all right, they're almost always some letter and then M dot. So the difference is with just a letter M, it would be am, im, rim. With M dot, it's im, rim. Can everyone hear that difference? Yeah, so it just means it's not a letter on its own. It's just a symbol that means, hey, nasalize the vowel in front of me. Make it like when you have a cold. Okay. Then the other thing you'll see a lot in Sanskrit mantras is an H with a dot underneath. And that process is called Visarga. And what that one means is put a breathy sound, an aspirated sound on the end of the word. Okay. So two words where you'll see that H dot are namaha and shanti. So it's not the letter H, it's not namaha or shanti. It's a breathiness. You can feel it on the palm of your hand. So if you say this word namaha or namah, 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 right? There's this big puff of hot air at the end of the word. And what can be confusing sometimes is sometimes it's just this breathiness at the end, namah, shanti, right? Sometimes the vowel on the left of it will repeat itself. So you might hear namah, or you might hear namaha. You might hear shanti, or you might hear shantihi. They're exactly the same in meaning. It's a stylistic difference. So sometimes within the same mantra, the H will just be a breathiness at the end of a word. Sometimes within that same mantra, it'll cause the vowel on its left to repeat again on its right. Okay. And neither is wrong or right. It's a stylistic thing, a sound thing, what sounds good. And you can hear different people recording these mantras that either repeat or don't. And you can repeat or not. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, okay. So the repeat of the syllable is optional. Okay. The other thing you will see is the difference between aspirated and unaspirated consonants. So these consonants are all pronounced just like they are in English. Easy. Some of them have that breathy H sound after them and some don't. So this sounds like pa. This sounds like pa. Ba, ba. Ta, ta, da, da, ka, ka, ga, ga. And again, you can test yourself using the palm of your hand. So pa, pa, pa. So you can see if you can make the sound PA with no breathiness hitting your hand. Pa, 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 pa. And then try it with the breathiness. Pa, pa, pa. And that's an important distinction in Sanskrit. Okay. So it's something that's a little bit different. And we need to pay attention when we see a letter H after a consonant. It's just one sound, but it's a breathy one. Okay. Does that make sense, Sharon? Yeah. Okay. But otherwise, these consonants are just like our English consonants. Just look out for an H if you see one have a breathiness after it. The next set of consonants are sounds we do not have in English. Okay. They're called retroflex sounds. And the retroflex sounds need you to make a configuration in your mouth that you don't ever use in English. Well, for all intents and purposes. So when you see a dot underneath a letter, any letter but not M, right? So we already looked at M dot and then we know what that means. A dot under any other letter means to form this sound as a retroflex. So to do this, if you take the tip of your tongue and put the tip of your tongue on the back of your teeth, and then start to slide it up, you'll feel like a bumpy ridge, right? There's this bumpy ridge right above your teeth. And then if you keep going, there's kind of a little indentation right before the hard palate, right? So it's the teeth, bumpy ridge, and then smooth. So if you take your tongue and you go beyond your teeth, just beyond that bumpy ridge, right before you get to the smooth part, you'll find that your tongue is curled back a little bit. And then you make the sound. So T with a dot underneath sounds like ta, 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 ta. So you can tell your brain, I'm making the sound T, but I need to make the sound T with my tongue in that spot. So it's kind of ta, ta, ta. And all the other sounds you'll make there as well. So they'll be the same aspirated, unaspirated difference. Ta, ta. Da, da, na. Do you have a question, Gretchen? Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you have to leave your tongue in that spot?
No. You'll release it just like you would if you're.
Comes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where your tongue will be. And then you start your T sound and then let it drop just like it would in English. Right. So in English, we make the T sound on the bumpy ridge. So if you get ready to say tiger, but don't say it, get ready to say tiger. Your tongue is waiting on the back of that bumpy ridge, right? Yeah, because that's where the English T is. And then if you were a French speaker, the T sound is on the back of the teeth. So if you're going to say tigre, your tongue will be waiting on the back of your teeth. As an English speaker, when you were a little child, you learned to hear T as a sound from that ridge is called the alveolar ridge. So, but the same thing, you'll release it, right? So if you're going to say tiger, your tongue is waiting, it's on that bumpy ridge, but as soon as you're done, tiger, it comes down. Okay, so same thing with these sounds. Okay. So for the consonants, the T's and D's, and then also there's a nasal sound up there, no, no, no. And I said we never have retroflex sounds in English, but sometimes we do, we just aren't aware of it. So we have the N dot sound in the word onion, onion, onion. So if you're going to say the word onion, you don't say onion. We already are going to make the ya sound. So your tongue is back there and you are actually making an N dot sound. We just don't recognize it. Onion. So if you start to say the word onion and then freeze before you make the N sound, your tongue's probably back there, right? Curled back, ready for the nya, nya sound. Okay. Okay. And then this guy is the sh sound made in a retroflex position. So get ready to say sh, like in show. So curl your tongue back, go to that same spot. Sh, sh. The difference here is that the T's and D's are consonants, so your tongue is touching that spot. The sh is, and this is more than you need to know, but it's a sibilant, so it's a hissy sound. So your tongue is hovering, it's not touching. So you put your tongue in that retroflex spot, and then just take it a little ways away and go sh, sh, sh. Okay. Then Sanskrit also has the English sh, right? The palatal sh, like in show or shopping. And the way you'll see that written in transliteration is this S with an accent. So this is sh, this is sh, 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 sh. And when these retroflex sounds get easier, they're actually fun, I think. They give it a really distinctive sound, right? Because it's not an English sound. Okay. Another important thing to notice about Sanskrit is that V and W, meaning the English sounds va and wa, are the same. So you will see sometimes words written with a V, and you'll see that same word written somewhere else with a W. The reason is there's no distinction in Sanskrit. And what they're going to sound like to your ear depends, again, on the speaker. So you can hear somebody saying mantras and these all sound like V's. Somebody else, they'll all sound like W's. What I've noticed is that if it begins a syllable, it sounds more like a V most often. If it's after an S, it'll sound more like a W. Okay. But I also spent a lot of time trying to figure out, is that a V or a W, before I learned that they are the same thing. All right. So if you hear, and it's true in Hindi too. So it was cute. There's a woman in the teacher training who her native language is Hindi. And I was teaching Sanskrit pronunciation to them. I'm like, so this is true, right? Because I've been teaching this. I mean, do you hear V and W the same? She's like, oh, yes, yes. She's like, when I see W, I need to think that is W sound, like in water. So I thought, okay, it really is true. Like, yes, that's right. Okay. The other thing is, if you see the letter C all by itself, it's going to sound like cha. Okay. So you know the word for chakras, like officially, you may have seen the word chakra written either with or without the H. Officially, it's not with an H. Chakra is C-A-K-R-A. But people put that H in there just to help English speakers have some idea how to say that sound. So a C all by itself is cha. Okay. And then the Sanskrit R, and I didn't teach this last time, but Bonnie heard it. So I think it's a good thing to bring that up. The Sanskrit R sounds more like a Spanish R. It's like a trill sound. Okay. So like ra, ram. Right. So if you think of like Rama, right? The god Rama. It's not Rama, it's Rama, Rama. Okay. Okay. And so your goal is to kind of learn how to read transliteration and to practice it. And the more you do that, the easier it gets and the more authentic your mantras sound. But don't let the process of learning this stop you from using them. Okay, so ideally we can work on these sounds and get really good at these sounds. But in the meantime, keep practicing your mantras, right? And don't let this intimidate you. It's really not too hard, right? Once you start practicing with it, it's like learning kind of the instructions for anything else. So any questions on these Sanskrit sounds? Okay. And every time we look at a mantra, so the thing with the prayers of the tradition, there's a lot going on. With the Mahamrityunjaya, I only had to pull out a few things that were showing up, but now all kinds of things are showing up because we're looking at a lot of prayers. Okay, so knowing this and armed with this information, you know how to pronounce every single sound that you're going to see. Okay, there will be no surprises, no tricks. So when you look at some of these Sanskrit words and they look really long and you are nervous about how to pronounce them, some Sanskrit words can be this long. The best thing to do, and I've been telling people this for a long time, divide them into syllables. If you divide them up into syllables, they're easy because again, you know all the sounds now, right? So if you remember doing this in probably like third or fourth grade English class, having to divide syllables with those little slash marks, right? So the rule is that each vowel is the nucleus of its own syllable. So if you look at a word in front of you, everywhere you see a vowel, that's going to be a syllable. The question is, what do you do with the consonants? All right. And Sanskrit has a rule. And what's really nice with Sanskrit rules is they have very few exceptions. So when you know the rules, you can look at a 30-syllable word and you can divide it all up, no problem. So the rule is this: if there is one consonant between two vowels, it will go to the right. Okay. So if there's one vowel, actually, we're going to look at an example. If there is one consonant between two vowels, push it to the right when you break your syllable. If there is more than one consonant between two vowels, the first one will go left and all the other ones will go right. And that's all you need to know to break up Sanskrit words. So this word indriya, which means a sense, right? There's 5 senses, 5 indriyas. If I didn't know how to break this up, I would look at it and I would say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3 vowels. So because there's 3 vowels, there's going to be 3 syllables. All right, each vowel will be the nucleus of its own syllable. So then I got to think, where do the consonants go? Okay, so if I look here, here's an I and here's an I, and in between I have N, D, and R. Lots of consonants. So the rule is the first one goes left. So the N will go left and everybody else goes right. Indri. And then I see I have an I and an A, and there's a Y in between. So my rule is, let's see, if there's only one consonant, it'll go right. Okay, so I get ya. That makes sense to everybody? It's a pretty easy rule, right? And it's pretty much 100%. So if you have some extremely long word, you now know how to break it up. The one thing to be careful about is if you see your aspirated consonants like BH, DH, that's only one sound. Buh, duh. So treat that as one sound, one consonant. Okay. So those aspirated sounds that have an H after them, we use 2 English letters to represent them. In the script, so in the Devanagari script, it's one symbol. Okay. So beware the aspirated sounds are one sound. Otherwise, it's pretty easy. Okay. So great. I have my words all divided up into syllables and I can practice each syllable on its own. Then the other question is where to mark stress. Okay. So there's one sound that's going to get a heavier accent than the rest. So once you have it broken up into syllables, you're going to look for your heavy one. And there is a stress marking rule for Sanskrit, and it's this. You start at the very last syllable in your word, and that's never the heavy or the stress syllable. Okay. So for that reason, you're going to start moving left. And there's nowhere else Sanskrit moves left, right? So it's not like, I think Chinese, right? That you read right to left. It always reads left to right. But when we're figuring out stress marking, we're going to be moving left from the back of the word. Okay. It's never the last syllable. So I'm going to move left. If it's only a 1-syllable word, I can't move left. And it's going to be just that 1-syllable word. All right. Otherwise, I'm going to keep moving left until I find a heavy syllable that will be accented. If I get all the way to the front of the word and I never found a heavy syllable, it'll be the first syllable. So now the question is, what is a heavy syllable? And it's easier for me to tell you what a light syllable is. A light syllable is any syllable that ends in a simple short vowel. Everything else is heavy. And we're going to see a bunch of examples of this soon. So if I went back to here, simple vowels, a, I, U, R. Any syllable that ends in those sounds is a light syllable. Any syllable that ends in a, I, U, A, I, O, ow, or any consonant is heavy. But what we'll find is in Sanskrit, there are a lot of light syllables. Okay, so there's a lot of syllables that end in just ah. So they're pretty common. So here are our prayers, all 4 of them, and they're divided into syllables and they're marked for stress. So this might be, and like, again, I'll send you the PDF, a nice one to practice with. You could also practice doing it yourself, right? Can you divide them up based on just a regular transliteration? Check it with this. So let's start with the Guru prayer. And these are mostly pretty short words, right? But if I divided them into syllables, I would have Om Guru. And you can see the rule at work here, right? R was the only consonant between these 2 U's, so it went right. Brahma. Okay, so we'll just talk about syllables now. We'll talk about stress in a minute. Okay, so there was an H and an M in between the 2 A's. So what happened? The H went left because the first one goes left. Everything else goes right. Okay, let's look at one more line just to kind of practice this. Again, here's Guru, just the R between the 2 U's, so it goes right. Here, I had 2 consonants between the I and the U, sh, n. So the first one goes left, and then everybody else would go right. Let's look at a super long word. So I'm going to jump down here to, this is the student teacher prayer. So here's kind of a long word, Navaditamastu. Right. So when you see that all written out as one word, it's like, wow, how do I ever say that? Right. But you can divide it up. Here's 2 A's. So the V will go right. Here is E and A. There's 1 consonant in between. It will go right. And here is an M between the 2 A's. Oh, this is a new word. Okay. Yeah, I think that we're writing this one as 2 words. Sorry, this should be Navaditamastu. Yeah, the M should be over there. Sorry. All right, I'll edit that before I send it to you. There's always one thing I find every class. Okay, so it should be Tamastu. So between the A, I'm sorry, between the A and the U, then there's an S and a T. The S goes left, everything else goes right. That's the T. Let me mark down that I need to fix my Tom. Okay. So do you guys feel pretty good about how the syllables are divided? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you could practice this too with the transliteration to make sure that you got it. And I will send you the fixed version of this too to check it too. Okay. So then the next thing you might want to do then is to mark your heavy or your stressed syllable in each word. Okay. So these are all very simple words. There's 2 syllables, right? So I start at the last one, and it's never the last one, so I go left. It's gu. All right, let's take a longer word to make it more interesting. So Maheshvaraha. So I'm going to take a look at this one, and I'm going to start at the end. It's never the last one. I'll go left. Is this a light syllable or a heavy one? It's light, right? So it can't be that one. So I'm going to go left again. And this one is heavy. So I'm going to accent it. Maheshvaraha. Maheshvaraha. Okay. Okay. And this is a place too where that V is going to sound like a V. Varaha. But will you hear Maheshwaraha sometimes? You sure might, right? Again, depends on the recording. So just notice that. Then this one, here's a long word here too. We could start at the end. Hi. It's not that one because it's the last one. So let's move left. Can it be va? No, because it's light. So let's move left again. Can it be va? Ah, yes, it can. Right? Because it's a long vowel. Light syllables are only short, simple, and in a short, simple vowel. Okay. So why don't we practice saying these? And actually, let me fix this now before we practice it wrong. Okay. Okay, well, we're already at 11, so maybe we'll just take a minute and just read through them. Does anybody have any questions on anything before we do that? So you're gonna just bear with me for like 3 more minutes or so? Okay. 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 And when you're practicing the stress marking, you can use your hand because sometimes that'll help you get used to that idea of stress, right? So, Om Gurur, no, wait, sorry, Om Gurur Brahma. Om Gurur Brahma. Gurur Vishnu. So could it be Vishnu? It could, but most often I've heard it Vishnu. And that's one's full of retroflex sounds, right? Vishnu. Guru Devo Maheshvaraha. So already we can see an example. Vishnu, not Nuhu, Nuh. But then this will sound like Heshvaraha. Could be Heshvarach. So no repeating, repeating. And again, it's a stylistic thing. It's not wrong. They're the same in meaning. Okay. Guru Sak Shat. Sak Shat Param Brahma. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay. So why don't we try it together slow? Sound good? Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshvaraha. Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Good. Okay, and then the Asatoma. Asatoma Sad Gamaya. Tamaso Ma Jo Tir Gamaya. Mrit yor ma amritam gamaya. Okay, so that sound with when it's between the M and T sounds like mrit, 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 mrityor. Some people make it sound just more like an RI, mrit. Not bad, it's close. All right, so if you have a little trouble with that, you can just see it in your mind as MRIT, mrit. But if you know it's mrit, mrit, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Okay, and then let's look at the student teacher prayer. And this one is the most challenging, but I think I'll divide it up like this. It's a little easier. Om. I guess this Om should be bolded too. Om sa ha na va tu. Sa ha now bu nuk tu. So bu nuk tu. Saha viryam karavahai. Tejasvi navadita mastu. Ma vidvishavahai. Okay, this one's tricky. Let's do this one just one time together. Om Sahana Vavatu. Saha now bu naktu. Saha viryam karavavahai tejasvi na vaditam mastu. Ma vidvishavahai. That good? Yeah, so the asatoma is the easiest, the student teachers are the hardest. But very good practice. And then pretty soon you'll be like, karavavahai. Right, no problem. So it's very fun too. Yeah. Okay, last one. Om Purnam Adaha. So this is a place where it just defaults to the first syllable for stress, right? Purnam idam. Purnat, Purnam udach yate. Purnasya, Purnam adaya. Purnam eva vashish yate. Okay, this one's a little bit easier. Okay, and then they all close. The shantis will appear sometimes interspersed when you're doing them all in order, and it depends a little bit on which recording you're listening to. But we close the prayers with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay. And I put the A in parentheses here because this one, again, almost always you'll hear that reflected sound. Om Purnam Adah is out there though. So Adaha, more common. Okay. So any questions on anything that's up here? Okay, sorry, I went over a little bit.
Tracy, your email is
Yeah, it's TRACY at hibuffalo.org. Also, if you write to just info at hibuffalo.org, that's usually me doing the mailbox for HIB.
I'm sure
yeah.
I've done
Yeah, I'm the person that says this is just a friendly reminder that gentle yoga with Sarah begins. That's always me. So
good. Thank you.
Good. All right. Well, have fun practicing this. I'll send you the recording and the PDF. And if anything comes up in the future, you can always find me. So.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope that was helpful.
Thanks
Good.
so much, Tracy.
Yeah, it's
Tracy,
great to
thank
see
you.
you all.
Thank you, Tracy.
Very helpful. Thank you, Tracy.
Good. Hey, Adrian, how are you?
Good. How are you, Tracy? Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one. Yes.